Hello, welcome to Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Morore. At Now Tell Us, we get to have people come and tell us stories. They come and educate us, they come and inspire us. And it's always a great time that we are having here. Today is another great day where we are going to meet with someone who has a story to tell, and that's overcoming adversity. She's going to tell us what she's been through, and then I believe you're going to gain something from this episode. So stay tuned to the end. And without spending one more minute, I'm going to welcome to the show Holly Francis. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Welcome so much, or welcome, and thank you so much for having me, Anthony. I really appreciate you bringing me on as a guest.
Yes, and we appreciate you taking your time and being with us here. And I believe it's going to be a great time because of what I expect to learn today and also
Absolutely.
get some inspiration today. Now, to get us started, would like to know uh, who is Holly and where is she from?
So, my name is Holly Francis, and I am from Edmonton, Canada,
Hmm.
and I am a GBS survivor. I'm an author, I'm a mom. Yeah, a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, and you say GBS. And to some of us, that could be something new that we may never have heard of it. So, what is GBS?
So, GBS is a rare autoimmune disorder, and you're right, most people have never heard of GBS. It stands for Guillain Barre syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's a rare autoimmune disorder. It's quite similar to multiple sclerosis, but it's a little bit different in that it affects the peripheral nerves of the body. It is an autoimmune disorder. So basically, what happens is something triggers an autoimmune response, and the body basically attacks itself. And what it does is attacks the peripheral nerves in the body, and it usually comes on very suddenly, and it causes paralysis and weakness and pain and all sorts of things. And so GBS can range from very mild to more severe. And I discovered that I had GBS when I was shortly after giving birth to my daughter. So I was 26 when it happened, and it was very, very sudden that it came on.
Mm. And what was the event of you discovering that you had it? Was it a diagnosis or did
Yeah.
you?
So what? So
Mhm.
what happened is, yeah, I'll walk you through kind of my story and kind of what I've gone through with GBS. So this was back in 2011, so almost over 11 years ago now. And I was completely healthy. I was 26 years old, living life to the fullest. I had just given birth to my daughter, so I was a brand new mom, and was very excited about being a mom. My pregnancy went so smoothly. My birth went very well. I had a C-section with my daughter, and we were at home and we were recovering and we were doing well. And my daughter was beautiful, and she was just a healthy baby, and life was great. And I was really enjoying life, and I was looking forward to my future and just making plans for the future with my daughter. In Canada, we get a year off, so I had a whole entire year off to spend with her, and I was just in a really, really good place in my life. And then everything just came crashing down very, very suddenly. So it was my daughter was just over 3 weeks old, and we were at home, and all of a sudden I felt this weird tingle in my finger, and at first I thought it was like I burnt myself or something, and just kind of brushed it off. And then as the hours went by, I kind of noticed more things. So I noticed like I was having this weird pain in the back of my neck, and it was quite severe. And I was thinking like maybe I pulled a muscle, or I wasn't sure what was kind of going on. And then as the hours continued, I was kind of having trouble walking. My legs felt really heavy. I was having trouble getting up the stairs, and it was just kind of like, what is going on? Something just doesn't feel right. So at the time, I actually kind of started thinking that maybe it was a pinched nerve, and just kind of brushed it off again. But everything just got worse. So the tingling in my hands, the weakness in my legs, and the pain in my neck just got worse and worse. So I would say less than 8 hours after that, all those things kind of were worsening. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go see a doctor. So I drove myself to the doctor, and the doctor, he actually misdiagnosed me, and he said, "You're right. It probably is a pinched nerve. Go home, and you'll be fine." So I went home, but it just got worse and worse. And then in the middle of the night, like I tried to go to sleep that night, the pain was so severe. I was taking pain medication. Nothing was helping. My daughter was in her bassinet, and she started crying, and I woke up to go to her, and when I woke up I stood, or when I got up I stood, and I fell. I could no longer walk anymore. So that was when I knew that something was seriously wrong. So I had my husband at the time. He drove me to the hospital, and I'm thinking I'll be probably be out in a couple hours by the time I get in to see a doctor, so just drop me off, not realizing that I was going to go through such an ordeal. So I go into the doctor, I go into the hospital, and immediately the doctor recognized what it was and said, "You're having weakness, you're having this pain in your neck, and I think it might be Guillain-Barré syndrome." And very fortunate that I was diagnosed very quickly because they were able to start treatment. But unfortunately, treatment really didn't help me at that time. Things just progressed and just got worse and worse. So within 12 hours of being at the hospital, I could no longer walk. I could no longer move my body, move my legs. Within 72 hours, the paralysis spread up to basically my neck, and I could no
Mm-hmm.
longer breathe on my own anymore. So I was rushed to ICU, and I was ventilated, put on a machine basically to help me breathe because I no longer could. And from there, I just went downhill, and I really tried to push through mentally, but it was such a struggle. Uh, they told me that I was going to get better. They told me that with GBS, typically you hit your worst and you'll stay at your worst for several weeks, but then you'll show signs of improvement, and you'll start to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Time I was in such severe pain. I felt like my life was over, and I felt like I was actually dying, and it was so hard for me to push through. And the paralysis just like made it impossible for me to do anything. I couldn't reach out to touch my daughter. I couldn't speak. I couldn't say I love you to her. And so it was a very dark period of time for me. Um, and I didn't show any signs of improvement for almost 7 weeks. So
Mm-hmm.
for 6 or 7 weeks, I lay in ICU, completely paralyzed, unable to move, unable to even move my head. I communicated by using a communication board that my family had brought in, and they basically pointed to the letters, and I would blink. And I was 26, and so I just was just so lost, and I felt broken, and I felt like there's no reason to fight. I can't keep going on, and I just it was such a struggle. But my family and my doctors and my nurses, they were so supportive, and they tried to really encourage me, and obviously my daughter was a huge inspiration. I really wanted to get back to her one day. So I pushed through as hard as I could, and eventually, I did start to show signs of improvement. My fingertips started to move, my hand started to move. And one of the doctors, he saw that I was really losing hope. And so he actually contacted another GBS survivor that had overcome GBS just like me. He had actually been in the same hospital that I was in. And so he came in and he came to visit me. And just to see him standing beside my bed, fully recovered, knowing what he went through, it really it just really inspired me to keep fighting. He had children as well, and I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to fight, and I wanted to get back to my baby. And he brought me a sign, and it's funny, it's actually on the wall behind me. You can see it, but it says, "Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at day's end saying, I will try again tomorrow." And I remember really, really being inspired by that because at the time I felt I was going through something so challenging, and people kept telling me that I was so strong, and I could get through this, and I could overcome this, and I was going to make it out of this one day, which was really hard for me to hear because at the moment I didn't feel strong. I felt like I wanted to give up. I was struggling, I was crying, and I was just so emotionally drained that I didn't feel strong. And so when he gave me that sign, and it was just a reminder that courage isn't always this strong voice. It's not always like, oh, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's in tears, and sometimes you're just struggling. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this, and you're just fighting. And if you can't do it, you can always just try again tomorrow. And so that's the mantra that I kind of kept in the back of my mind. I stared at that sign day after day, and you know what? On the hard days, it was like I can't do it, and I would just break down. And but I would always say, you know what? I can try again tomorrow. And so that's what I did every day. It was a new day, trying again, and it was such a struggle. I went through the most pain I'd ever experienced in my life. It's severe nausea and vomiting, and I was on so many medications, so I was so out of it. And then my daughter's there; they're putting her on my lap every day so that we could try to bond. And it was amazing, but so difficult and so emotionally challenging for me to watch everyone else around me in my hospital raise
Mm-hmm.
my daughter, and to know that I had waited my entire life to be a mom, and then it was suddenly just felt like it was ripped away. So it was definitely hard to push through
Mm-hmm.
those days.
Yeah.
I did, and I every day I just continued to push forward, and slowly over time I started to get better.
Mm. We can try to imagine at the point of that pain that you are going through in ICU. I mean, you're not having an idea of how it is to get well. But then there's something that you shared, and this is the reason that we do what we do, even here at Now Tell Us, that you have someone standing by you who inspire you,
Yes,
who gives you hope over tomorrow, like the survivor that brought you the sign that gave you hope, those who are standing by you and helping you walk. This is why we are here as humanity, to be there for one another, to inspire one another, to bring a light to someone who may be in the dark. So we
exactly.
thank the person that came to you and showed you, yes, it's possible. It happened to me, and I'm out of it. So we are glad that there was someone like that in your life.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And like when I was going through that, I felt very alone because GBS is a rare disease. And so I felt like no one else in the world could possibly understand what I was going through. The
Mhm.
doctors are telling me, oh, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, you're not the one dealing with it, though. So to meet someone else was very inspiring. And that's what inspired me to get so involved. So um, as the weeks went by, I slowly got better and better, and like the paralysis started to fade, and I could move my arms again, and I could hold my daughter. And the next step was getting off the ventilator. So I would say that that was the hardest part of my journey, was learning to breathe on my own. So it
Mhm.
was like running a marathon that I'd never trained for. I would go off the ventilator for 15 seconds at a time, and I felt like I was underwater and couldn't breathe, and I felt like I was going to drown at every second. But I pushed through, counted down the seconds. I did everything I could to make it through, and over time I started to get a little bit stronger off the ventilator. And it was torturous. I had to stare at that sign and go, I could try again tomorrow. I could try again tomorrow. And that's what I did. And eventually it was almost 3 months that I was in ICU.
Mhm.
And finally, I was strong enough to get off the ventilator, and I got out of ICU. And that
Mm.
was a huge turning point in my recovery, because I literally thought that learning to breathe on my own was going to be impossible. And every time I did it, I was convinced that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And so not only was my family and my friends and the doctors and that other GBS survivor an inspiration, I also found inspiration in myself,
Mhm.
realizing that, you know what, I just overcame something that I did not think that I was going to be able to do. And so it gave me, um, it gave me this spark of like, you know what, I could do anything then. And
Mm.
so from that point, I really started working on my recovery myself. And I became very determined to get back to my daughter, to be able to hold
Mhm.
her and to be the mother that I always wanted to be. So from there, I started physiotherapy. I learned how to hold cutlery, how to feed myself, how to drink from a cup. It was a very slow process. Everything took forever. And at the time, it felt like, am I ever going to be able to do these things? I remember having to stack cups on top of each other, and my fine motor skills were so so rough, and it was such a difficult task. And again, it was just like, am I ever going to be able to do these? I can always try again tomorrow. And that's what I did. And eventually, over time, I got stronger and stronger. I got a little bit faster at things. I could hold my daughter. I could feed her again. I could feed myself. Moved to a rehab hospital where I learned to strengthen every muscle in my body. I learned how to stand. I learned how to walk. I would use a walker for several weeks until I could eventually walk with a cane. And then I walked with a cane for another several weeks. And then eventually was able to walk on my own. And at that point, I was able to go home. So I went home after it was 126 days in the hospital. My daughter was almost 6 months old by the
Mm-hmm.
time that I got home. So I lost out on a lot of her life. And it was very heartbreaking for me at the time. But now, after now, like I've fully recovered. I've continued to push myself. I've realized what I'm capable of. I got into exercise. My journey through rehab really made me fall in love with exercise. It
Mm-hmm.
made me see how capable our bodies are, and the things that they can overcome. And I'm now stronger than I was before GBS. And when I look back on my journey, even though it was so horrible at the time, there's so many blessings that came out of it, like the gratitude that I have for being the mother that I am, and being able to be with my daughter. My daughter's now 11 years old. It's been
Mm-hmm.
11 years. Yeah, but it really has changed my life for the better, and it inspired me to want to reach out and find other people that have had GBS. So I started my YouTube channel and my Facebook and Instagram pages, and I just started sharing my story and talking about my story. And as I see somebody comment that they've never heard of GBS, most people have never heard of GBS. So I like to bring awareness to Guillain-Barré syndrome and just show people what it can do to somebody that's completely healthy and how it can devastate their lives. But I also want to show people that have gone through GBS that you can overcome it even when you're in the thick of it and you think you can't. You can. And there's a whole community of people out there that have recovered from GBS. And so that's why I've continued to share my story and bring awareness, connect with survivors all over the world. I wrote my book, and I just continue to try to inspire anybody wherever I can, even if they're not a GBS survivor. For me to go through what I did, you think that you're never going to be able to get through it, but there is life after GBS, and there is life after these horrible struggles that we go through.
Mm. And we are very grateful that you are here and you are sharing your story with us here. And Mishka says, God bless you, Holly. And all the others who are watching, or those who get to listen to this even after we are through with it, we really appreciate you. We appreciate your feedback. And thank you, Mishka. Thank you, each and every one of you who is listening or watching. And
Yes, thank you so
yes,
much.
and we thank Holly for taking her time to come here and inspire us. Now, when you talk of you're giving back, you're looking back to those people who have GBS, you want to inspire them and tell them there's a hope. Now, you mentioned a point in life, or rather, during that ordeal that you are going through, where you imagine that you are the only one in the world who is going through it. And in my experiences, I've met even in my own personal experiences, there are experiences I go through, and even though everyone around has gone through that experience, to me, at that point, it seems like I'm the only one in the world that is having that experience. So, you sharing your story, this one that you're sharing with us about GBS, is not only going to touch people with GBS or those who are recovering from GBS. It's a story that is going to inspire as many people, and already has inspired through the stories that you've shared before. Is going to inspire a big part of our population into overcoming their challenges. So again, we thank you. Now, you told us about your greatest challenges in the recovery, and now you're here. You walk. You do. What are the many other things that you do
Oh
now?
my goodness,
Apart from
yeah.
the exercise that you've told us, you became engaged in exercise. What are the
Yeah.
other things that you've been doing along?
So when I was in ICU, I remember laying there and just thinking, like, wow, I'm never going to get out of this ICU bed. I'm never going to recover. I'm never going to be able to hold my daughter. I'm never going to be able to walk. I'm never going to be able to do anything that I might have wanted to do. I might never be able to go swimming with my daughter. I'll never be able to go walk on the beach, jump in the ocean, climb a mountain. And so when I was doing these trials off the ventilator, I remember making a promise to myself that if I ever did get out of ICU, that I would do more of those things. I would go after the goals that I wanted to achieve. I would do all these little things that I had thought that I had the whole work or my head and my entire life to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I'm in ICU and I'm like, I might not be able to get to do these things. And so when I did recover, it was like I had been given a piece of my life back. I had been given a second chance to do all these things. And so I immediately started traveling more because it's something I really wanted to do. I love the beach. I love the ocean. So I made a point of, okay, I'm doing annual trips here in Canada where I'm from. There's no oceans or beaches anywhere near me. So it was like, I need to make a point of traveling there because it's something that I'm in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And spending time with family and friends, even something simple as that, it was like, I need to make more of an effort to maintain my relationships because I care about these people and I want to spend more time with them. Um, um, riding a bike again. I mean, that seems so simple, but at the time it was, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. So doing that, getting into exercise, there's a lot of people out there that would love to exercise. I met so many GBS survivors and other survivors in the rehab hospital that I recovered at that did never get out of a wheelchair and they aren't able to walk again. And
Mm.
so I got into exercise because I knew, like, you know what, if they could, I knew they would want to. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to use my body for its capabilities and what we are able to do. So I climbed mountains, I've gone zip lining. I've become much more adventurous and I like to try new things as scary as they can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Writing a book for me was a huge project that um, I don't think I would have undertaken if I hadn't gone through GBS, just to show me that, you know what, you are capable of overcoming hard things. And life is so short, and really can change in the blink of an eye. I mean, I went from being completely healthy to paralyzed in the ICU within 72 hours.
Mm.
And so I just really encourage people to just, you know what, stop putting things off. You never know when your life can change. You never know when something can just be taken away from you, especially our health. I think we all take advantage of our health and we don't realize just how lucky we are to have it until it's gone.
And that's a life lesson that you've shared with our listeners and our viewers right there. And I was anticipating to learn because if someone has been somewhere and come out of it, he comes out with lessons that he passes or she passes towards the other, I mean, to other people that they can draw some lessons from. What, apart from what you've already shared, which is a great insight, what other things has the audio taught you?
Well, I liked what you had said, how like you realize that you're not alone. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a really important lesson, I think, for everyone, that depending on what you're going through, I mean, there's so many different challenges that we go through in life, like a
Mm.
million things. And I found that even after I recovered from GBS, I had more things to go through. I've gone through
Yeah.
many different challenges. I've gone through a divorce and I've had to deal with issues at work and just stress and anxiety and all that kind of stuff, that everyday life stuff. And I think I've really learned from my experience with GBS is that you're not alone. And so
Mm-hmm.
you sometimes you got to take control of the situation and you got to reach out and find other people that can help you through it. And whether
Mm-hmm.
that's through Facebook groups or support groups, I find social media is a great place. Use hashtags to find groups of people, and there's so much inspiration out there. I know social media gets a bad rap that it can be very toxic and destructive, but if you look for the good side of it, there's
Mm-hmm.
so many amazing people out there that are sharing their journeys with whatever struggle they've been through. So if you can find them and you can help, they can help you through your journey, then great. It's unlike anything to walk into a room and connect with people that have all been through the same thing as you,
Mm.
which I've done a lot. I do a lot of GBS conferences I've attended over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and to meet people that have gone through a similar struggle, it's just like a connection that you just instantly have with these people. And so I encourage people, if you're going through whatever it is that you're going through, try to find others that are either going through it now, or have they're out on the other side, right? And they can help you through it. Just to be able to have that connection and realize that you're not alone, it can be so empowering.
Mm. Thank you very much for that. And now, your book. At what stage is it right now, and what's the title?
The book is finished. It's called Life Support:
Okay.
Surviving Guillain-Barré Syndrome. And the book is done, finished. We're just working on the basically the promotion side of things, and getting it ready for publication. So it will be published likely December, January of this year.
And I believe this is the story that you share in the book, or and something more maybe that we.
Yeah. So it's mostly about my time in the hospital, just
Okay.
because it was such a long time, and kind of just the struggles that I went through and the triumphs that I overcame. And then it does also talk a lot about what life was like after GBS, and what recovery was like once I was home and once I was back to reality, and what that looked like. Because I do want to point out that once you recover from GBS, you're not 100% back to normal. You deal with residuals, you deal with some pain, and some fatigue and tiredness. So learning to manage those residuals and learning to live again, and just kind of how it changed my life. That's really what the book is all about.
Okay. We'll be looking forward to read it, to read
Absolutely.
more of the details in the book, and extra things that you are going to share in there. And for the person listening to you and don't know how he is gonna keep up to date with the ongoings, how do they reach you? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, so there's actually several different ways. So I have a website, it's hollyaftergbs.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, social media. So, kind of your preference. So, YouTube channel, that's a great place if you are a GBS survivor and you're wanting to learn more about GBS. You can watch, I have several videos out explaining kind of what I've gone through that way, lots of questions that I answer there. Facebook is where I post more like articles about GBS in the news. People don't realize that it's rare, but it's not that rare. And there's actually tons and tons of people that have had GBS, including like NFL players. And there's a person that was on The Bachelor that had it as well. So there are people that get it. And so that's where I kind of share that information, some more just awareness. Instagram is my favorite. That's where I hang out the most. So I'm constantly on there, just kind of sharing my life, bringing awareness to GBS, just talking about updates on my book, that sort of thing. And I answer every message that I receive. So I love when people reach out to me, whether that's for GBS related stuff, or if it's just to reach out to me and chat. I'm happy to talk.
Wonderful. So once again, to each and every one of you who's listening or watching, the website is www.hollyaftergbs.com. And once you get there, you can always connect to her through all the other social
Yes.
platforms that she's mentioned. So go and connect with Holly, get to learn more about GBS, get to have some inspiration, and we will be glad if you give us some feedback. Right now, we have some feedback coming from Mishka Milagros. Hi, how are you? Mishka says, always, I love your podcast, Anthony, and your guest speakers. Thank you very much, Mishka, and everyone else who is watching but is shy to give us some feedback. We also appreciate you. And remember, you can always get this episode, past episodes, and future episodes at nowtellers.com. That's nowtellers.com. And all the other audio platforms, Audible, Spotify, um, Podmatch, name them. Just go to nowtellus.com and you'll get connected to all of them. Follow us, share it with your friends, all the people. Let them be inspired and let them learn something new, like GBS from Holly Francis today. Once again, thank you very much, Holly. And before we go, would like you to say just a few words, those words that you would like us to always remember every
Oh,
single day.
oh, my favorite. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at day's end saying, I will just try again tomorrow. I use that in everything that I do in my life. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my journey with your listeners.
Thank you too, once again, Holly. This has been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with Holly Francis, we are saying that's it and bye for now. Bye.
Thank you.